Hey everybody, welcome back to another daily drop here on Heel Report, brought to you by Tar Heel 24/7, also part of the CBS Sports Network. I am Tar Heel 24/7 publisher. He is Tar Heel 24/7 staff writer, Noah Weiskopf. Noah was with me in Charlotte on Tuesday at the second leg of the ACC basketball tip-off. It morphed from the women into the men at mid-afternoon. We got a chance to sit in on Commissioner Jim Phillips' State of the ACC address, which was interesting and not highly informative, but interesting nonetheless. And then, of course, later on in the afternoon, the Tar Heels were up. They had their time in the main ballroom press conference and then the breakout room. We're going to discuss our takeaways from it, which I think that there are many. Given the fact that the day was overwhelmed with Carolina football talk and news, and every other media member on planet Earth that was within the vicinity came up to us and said, what the hell? But we kept it to basketball. We got a lot of basketball stuff done, and that's what we're here to talk about. So, Noah, you and I both shared a lot of thoughts as we were going through the day. We did a lot of working off of one another throughout the day, and I think a consistent theme around not just Carolina on Tuesday, but something that I'm going to connect all the way back to our first Hubert Davis press conference in early September is there is a very positive vibe about this team. And I think that really showed out a lot on Tuesday.
Definitely. And it's fun to hear. It's fun for us to be around, right? Like it feels like that positive, upbeat mindset and that tone that Hubert's even talking with. And he stepped onto the podium and he moved off to go sit down, and Seth came on and they cracked a couple jokes about ice cream, and Hubert was giving him a tough time about no dairy-free flavors and on and on and on. And then, Henry is a newer guy and steps up to the podium, and Hubert, has this relationship with Seth that he's known him for this so long. And then Henry steps up there, who they've only known for a couple months, and he steps up there and still gives him stuff too about opening statement, and then when he's done talking, a closing statement, and then it's just back and forth. So I think it's just looking back to the first time that we started being around this basketball team for this season. It's like you said, it's a different vibe, and they are having a blast with each other, I think. And that's really, it's important. It's important for the team. It's important for chemistry. And I think that you'll start to see over time that translate onto the court, because it tends to be that the closer the team is, the more gelled and connected they are together, the better results that are on the court. And so I think it's a blast to be able to have Hubert have this relationship with his players, even with assistant coaches, I imagine. So it'll be exciting to see sort of how they open the season and to see how much that relationship between the players is able to help them right out of the gate.
Yeah, and I'll say this, because they all get along and laugh and have fun and all that kind of stuff, doesn't mean shots are going to go through the basket.
Right.
Doesn't mean guys are going to rotate well defensively and stop drives. Doesn't mean they're going to handle ball screens well or anything like that at all. None of that is what we're saying right here. But what we are saying is that what you just hit on, this right now is already a more connected team than it was at any time last year. And part of the proof in that is Hubert was asked yesterday about the personalities. And I was going to ask him a question about the personalities too, but someone else beat me to it. And last year at this time, he was saying this is the most quiet team he'd ever been around. College, pro, college, high school, pro, whatever it was. Most quiet team he'd been around. And we saw that throughout the course of the year. And there were some quiet divisions within that team. That's one of the reasons that, among others, that they didn't always play to the level that they should have played. All of that said, he was asked about the personalities and said, conversely to last year, this is a very loud team. It's a team that chats. It's a team that enjoys one another off the court. I think Derek Dixon told us a story last week about Caleb Wilson, and Ivan Metlakovic, how they go out together. Think of that trio walking down the street, strutting their stuff, having a good time. These guys are making fun of Ivan because of his accent, and then he's making fun of Caleb maybe because of his hair or whatever the case is. These guys are having fun. They're connected. They like each other. And young people can galvanize around that and play for each other. It's sort of the foxhole mentality. And most of the people in foxholes tend to be in the same age range. And if you're in a foxhole and you're going to fight for the dude to your left and the dude to your right, and you bring that mentality, whether it's the football, basketball, hockey, whatever it is, that can help you at times get through some of the rougher periods, either in a game or in a season. And I think that they're laying the foundation of being able to do that. Again, it has nothing to do with whether or not a shot's going to go through the basket, but it might have something to do with the better screen being set to set up that shot. Last year's team was a terrible screening team. It didn't look, they were bad at rotating defensively. There was some physical buy-in, give yourself up for the team things they didn't consistently do. And when we learn more and more about what the club is all about, part of that was a lack of connection. I think you'll see more of those things because of an increased connection.
And I think too that, Henry, when he was talking to us in the breakout room, he had told the group of us that was there that we've heard a lot about Hubert mandating his players to come into his office once a week, right? That's been a staple. But Henry went a little bit deeper into that and said, not only does he require us to come into his office once a week, but he also wants us to be in a position where that time that they're spending together is not a coach and player time. That's two guys talking to each other. That's two guys that are friends that are talking to each other. And Henry said, when we step on the court, it's a different vibe, right? He's coach, I'm player. When I step into his office, we're both friends. We're both just two dudes that want to talk about something. And so Henry even said that they'll poke fun at each other when he walks into the office. I can imagine Hubert makes comments about Henry's hair or like anything like that. And Henry said he appreciates that. He loves that he can have that relationship and then flip a switch when they get on the court, and all of a sudden it's business as usual, and it's a coach and player dynamic. So I think that's a really important part to everything too.
Yeah, I think most people who pay attention to Hubert press conferences, certainly us in the media, will say, yeah, he can be corny at times. And I think some of the corniness is what can make him effective with the right group. There are some groups the corniness won't work with. I don't think the corniness really registered very well a year ago, although that team was flawed in other ways. So maybe it didn't really matter one way or the other. With this group, I think the corniness resonates. I think that when Hubert gives them the tweak, alter, and pivot comments, that they'll chuckle, but they'll chuckle in a good way. They're not chuckling at him. They're sort of chuckling with him, even though he's not. And I think a big part of this is Seth. Seth has a really rare distinction, and I talked to Hubert about this yesterday. Seth has a rare distinction of being a fourth-year guy at the same school, and he's playing for the same coach. He's going to be the first and only through this year four-year guy to play all 4 years for Hubert. Now, RJ played 4 years for Hubert, but he had a first year under Roy. So his freshman year was Roy's last year. So Seth and Hubert are joined at the hip more than anybody else. And if you think about personality, and if you think about the kind of dude he is, that's a pretty good player for a coach who needs to have a big season to be conjoined with. And I think part of the Seth mindset and the Seth approach, you can see trickle onto the rest of this team. He played an active role in recruiting these guys in the portal. He went out to dinner with Henry. He's like, yeah, this is it. And Henry has said the same thing too. So it's maybe not a coincidence that they have some of the personalities they do, because they connected with Seth in March and April, and now here they are connecting in October with the opener a little bit more than 3 weeks away.
And along the same lines, I think that the competitiveness that this group shares, I think that's all helping them gel pretty quick too, right? Like, these guys are ultra competitors. We've heard Jonathan Powell rips his practice jersey during practice when he misses a couple shots. Like, this group, and Kyan, I think, told us that he believes he's the best shooter in the country. That's just his mindset, right? These guys all have the utmost confidence in themselves, and then not even to mention Caleb coming in and the things he's saying and how confident he is that not only he's going to be that dude for this team, but that this team can be one of the best in the country. He's made that abundantly clear. So I think the confidence aspect that plays into the aspect as well of team bonding, team chemistry, gelling, and all those kinds of things, because they all want to win. And like Caleb told us after the scrimmage, they're competing and they're doing all these things for one common goal. They want to win the national title. So I think when you have all those things aligned, I think something special can happen in the way that Hubert interacts with his players. I think this group really appreciates it.
Let me correlate something to 2 years ago. Cormac Ryan came over from Notre Dame and was known as a pretty feisty dude. In fact, he got into it when he was with the Irish. He got into it with RJ on the baseline at a game one time, and it was a little friction there. He came in, hey, man, we're teammates. Everything's in the past. And one of the things that RJ and Armando and Harrison Ingram and some of those guys spoke regarding Cormac, and they did so with tremendous respect and enjoyment because there was humor to it. Cormac, every once in a while, if he screwed up in a drill or in practice, he would kick the basketball, or he'd kick a cooler, he'd kick the basketball, and he'd scream a cuss word or something like that. And the guys kind of had fun with that. That became sort of a Cormac shtick and Cormacism. Already, we're hearing the Jonathan Powell tearing his jersey thing. And it started from other guys talking about it. And then we asked Jonathan last week, and he told us a story. So I asked Hubert on Tuesday about Jonathan as a defensive player. I said, Jonathan told us last week he's the best three-point shooter in the country. Other guys were asking questions about his shooting. I said, but if you look at his grade defensively, graded out exceptionally well, and he told us he can guard 1 through 4, and Hubert went on to talk about all that. Then it ended. That was the last question that he got, and then his time ended. So when we all stopped recording, I said to Hubert, I said, what about him tearing off his jersey? And he was like, oh, my God, I heard he did that at West Virginia, too. That was his first response, and he was loving it. He had a huge smile. He's like, I love that. I love that. I want my guys to be who they are. And I think last year's team either didn't have much personality or just really struggled being who they were at times. And somebody can argue and say, look, maybe Hubert had something to do with that because he didn't fully read the team as well as he should have earlier in the year. You could make that argument. I don't get the sense that that's the thing now. I think Hubert gets who they are. The next question is going to be, how early in the season does he figure out the mix and match that works, the rotation that works, because that has been a question before. But the more you know a team early, and it's a more veteran group for the most part, so I think it's also easier for a Henry Vessar and a Jaron Stevenson to get to know their coach when they're 20 and 21 as opposed to an 18 or 19-year-old doing it. There is a big difference there. Now, I just think that there's so many of these things that are lining up that, look, if these guys can make shots and they can defend and they can rebound, there's a lot of really good stuff here. I even said to the media relations, the great Steve Kirshner, as we were walking out from the main interview room where they were up on stage, and everyone's laughing. If you were standing outside that room and you heard the laughter inside, you would have thought it was a comedy club. Seriously, it was unbelievable. And I said to Steve when I'm walking out, I said, it's going to be a fun team to cover. He said, as long as they win games. And he's right. As long as this team wins games, people are going to love these dudes. And imagine like 6 or 7 mini Theo Pinsons when it comes to sense of humor. That's what they have. And I think that that's fascinating. And quite frankly, it's a needed diversion for this fan base right now, given what's happening in football.
Yeah. I mean, it's already a blast. And like you said, Hubert, I think there's a sense of like maybe comfort. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, maybe comfort with Hubert of like, he knows what this team has. It's just a matter of putting the pieces together. He knows what's on this roster and the talent that's in Chapel Hill. So maybe there's a sense of comfort from Hubert and a sense of relief almost that he's confident in what he has and he's able to have a good time and enjoy spending time around his players and enjoy even spending time around us and those kinds of things. So I think that maybe he's just more comfortable. Maybe he's settling in for this year and through practices and everything has a good idea.
A couple of the things before we close this out, and this is a fun topic. I think it's something we're going to readdress during the course of the year once we see things play out. But these guys also make fun of each other. And they make fun of each other about stuff that maybe in 2025 people would think, well, you don't really make fun of. For example, they make fun of Luka, the way he talks sometimes. And Luka kind of trolled them back. Whereas Seth told us a story that they walked in the locker room or something like that. Luka was in there alone. He was listening to music that they didn't think he would listen to. It's music that you figure that they would listen to, but not him. And they had fun with it. So when they're pointing out, when they're isolating little things like that, when they're isolating just regular mundane life stuff that pops up and gives them joy and entertainment, and without even making the effort, gives them connectivity, I think those are cool things that fan bases of a program like this want to know. Because if the team is good, they want to know everything about these guys. It becomes very personal. I call it the Church of Carolina basketball. It's legitimately there, but they also want to know all these dudes as much as they can, as well as they can, so they feel really connected to them by calling them first name all the time. Instead of last name, they want to call them by their first name all the time. And I see this developing. I see it developing on the roster. I see it developing even with Hubert. I think the way Henry, when Hubert was up at the dais yesterday, the way Henry was sitting there looking at him and kind of had a smirk emerged 6 or 7 times, in addition to some laughter at times. In fact, the Hubert story when I can't remember who it was, asked him about what Damon Stoudemire said about giving Hubert a bunch of assists. And Hubert's like, well, you tell Damon we won 20 games that year. And Henry's just laughing. You can see it as being very genuine and real. And we're not trying to sell something that isn't there right now. This is straight observation. If we didn't see it yesterday, we were not going to do a podcast about this today. We're not going to just force this stuff on you. And I think after last year, and certainly what's going on with the football side that we're both fully embedded in right now, I think that this is a very, very welcome thing for us to see as journalists and also for Carolina fans to see, because Hubert needs a big year. Carolina fans need a big year. They need Carolina basketball to be Carolina basketball again. And most of the really good Carolina basketball teams I've covered had connected personalities like this. Maybe not as many funny guys, maybe not as many laughers, but connected personalities, dudes who had no problem making fun of other dudes. I can go back to the 2017 locker room and bounce around each guy and tell you about how they did that. I can do the same thing in 2009. I can do the same thing in 2005. I can do it in 2012, a team that very well could have won a title if Kendall Marshall doesn't get hurt. 2019, if that team's not vomiting all day long the day of the Auburn game, maybe they advance, they get to a Final Four, and who knows? Maybe they win a national championship. That was a really, really good team and a very connected team in personality. So this club has some of those traits. Whether or not it applies in the basketball court, we'll find out. But it has those traits leading up to the start of the season.
It all comes down to being connected. That's where everything starts, right? Like if you're a team that has a bunch of just players, then you see the results on the field. You can tell the difference pretty easily just from the naked eye of which teams are close and which teams are really connected versus which teams are just going out there and the players just want to be the best of themselves that they can and don't really care about the outcome. So it's where everything starts is that how connected are you? And the thing is like even Seth was telling us, I think this was when he spoke to us a couple of weeks ago, is that some of their open gyms got really chippy. And we sort of dove into the chippiness aspect. And like, what does that mean? Are people pushing each other? Like, what does the chippy mean in an open gym with your own teammates? And he said he's not looking at it in a negative. And he wouldn't go into detail of what they were doing necessarily. But he said all that you need to know really is that it's our competitiveness. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to make them better. And that's what's going to help them not only gel, but once they get on the, in the same jersey and they're past the scrimmages and they're playing other teams that they don't know, and all of them together going after, like I mentioned earlier, one common goal to win every game and then ultimately to win the whole thing. But to win every game, you have to be connected. You have to be able to know where guys are at. You have to have that chemistry. And that's something that they talked about too, of during the scrimmage. One of the things that stuck out right after was that it was sloppy. And everybody that we spoke to after mentioned the turnovers, mentioned the sloppiness, and none of them seemed worried about it. They said, we'll figure, like, we have time before our first game. This happens with every team before the season. We just have to learn each guy. We have to learn where he's going to be on this play. Is he going to be right? Is he going to be 2 feet to his left, 2 feet to his right? Like, where is he going to be? And by the time the season starts, everyone seems really confident they're going to have that all down pat.
Like in human nature, whether it's in a family, whether it's on a team outside of college athletics, whether it's in the workplace, whatever, if you're in a volunteer organization, if you're in a yoga group, whatever it is, when people get along really well and they truly trust each other and like each other and play for each other, it's a lot easier to have accountability. And if things go wrong, the potential for accountability is there as well. Last year's club didn't have a lot of great accountability because it didn't get along that well. There were some divisions there. And that's another thing. Accountability can get you through rough patches. If you look at their schedule, there's a couple of periods in the schedule where they could lose 2 out of 3. They could lose maybe 3 out of 4. Do the personalities and the connectivity survive that? Does the accountability make it easier to plow through and move forward and be better having gone through that experience? Not every team is better having gone through a stretch of losing 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4, but some teams are. And the teams that are connected, the teams that have accountability, and the teams that are straight up with one another tend to handle those moments better, get something positive from them, and it makes them stronger down the road. A perfect example, the 2009 team, one of the best teams I ever covered in my life. I think they were 0-2 in the ACC. They lost at home to Boston College. And they won a national championship. They learned from it. There was accountability in that room over that. And that was part of the fiber that they took in the NCAA tournament, and none of their games were single digits in the NCAA tournament. And they blew the doors off of Michigan State in the national title game in Detroit. That's who that team was. And part of it was how connected they were. Part of it was the person. People remember the stories about Bobby Frazier smacking ping pong balls into Tyler Hansbrough's chest. That's the group they were. I'm not saying this group is there yet, but the foundation appears to be there that for the 2025, 26, they have a lot of those traits.
And they're on their way. I think that's really all else that needs to be said. Like we keep mentioning, the way that they're able to develop chemistry at this point in the season is a really good start. But again, can't jump to they're going to be in this spot in however many months, because we don't know. And things don't always progress as they should, right? We've seen this time and time again with other teams. We can even look at like the UNC football example. Like a lot of people thought that they'd be in one spot, and here they are in a totally different spot. So again, everything is where it should be now, and things look promising, but it doesn't guarantee success at any point in the season.
Yeah, and if they're 6 for 28 from three-point range against Kansas and lose at home, then we could probably throw out this discussion. Or that's when this discussion maybe reveals itself the most, because it will have to that night. He's Noah Weisskopf. I'm AJ. We appreciate you stopping by.